igualdad, pero esta vez me separaron. Dijeron mucho, pero no se olvidaron de callarse. Cuánto odio por mi piel sembraron. Dijeron historia y la tergiversaron. Dijeron guerra, muerte, odio y nos culparon. Enfermedades, epidemias nos contagiaron. Exterminación de mi fauna complace a tus mercados. Dijeron riqueza y todo se lo robaron. Oro, platino, diamante, a la fuerza se lo llevaron. Y la actualidad es tan triste que todo aquello que dijeron es lo mismo que hoy se dice más. ¿Quién dice, quién explota, quién se beneficia? El asesino, el mismo que da las noticias. Hay una cuenta fácil que siempre me da las grandes riquezas, de dónde vienen y hacia dónde van.
Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao. Nati Dre es afroresistencia, cultura ancestral, afrodescendencia, solidaridad. Esa es la esencia, la diáspora africana eleva la conciencia, conciencia negra, universal, progresista y transcultural. Negros y mestizos revolucionando, pueblos caribeños y africanos en un solo bando. No más explotación, colonialismo interno, no más confusión, supremacía blanca en el Babilón. Soy rojo, negro y verde, afroliberación. Mientras más negro, más represión. Somos creadores, recupera tu visión. Mi misión es educar con amor, contra el silencio, vivo sin temor. Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao.
What's happening, good people? We are live and direct. This is Rise Up Morning Show, the international morning show. Today we got a full house. You should be happy to be here with us.
Morning.
Peace.
Yes. On this beautiful, a beautiful Wednesday morning. We have a few folks with us. I am Kalonji Changa. Who else we got with us? Starting with that gentleman on the side with the headphones. Who are we up in here?
Isaac Jasper. I'm gonna pass this down to Doctor Who.
I guess that's me. What's going on, y'all? Peace and power. Dr. J in the building. What's really good?
No doubt. Who else we got up in here? We got the brothers from France. They taking their time. I guess it's a delay.
Well, peace. Fernando, Cardenas, aka International XB, Panafrican Legal Moja, Uhuru.
Okay, Uhuru. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so when you say brothers from France, I didn't know who you were talking about. You are in France, but you're not from France, right? So, yeah.
Next time we go, Bouna, next time we're going to tell them the brothers from the U.S. over there.
See, now you're set tripping.
Well, I don't want to discriminate anyone, right? But, you know, I'm the only one on the show who's born in Africa, so.
Whoa.
Okay,
we see brothers from Africa, that would be more than enough.
Listen, man. See that's why we don't bring Africans nowhere. Anyway, we was born in Africa too. We got stolen, brother. So you know.
Right.
Anyway.
That's why you said the brother from France, right?
I know. I caught myself afterwards, man. He took it personal, took it to the head. Anyway, no doubt, my brother's not definitely these captors are from Europe. We are African people, and we're grateful to be here with you all here today. This is the Rise Up International Morning Show. And I mentioned France because our brothers, Fernando and Bouna, if it's your first time watching, they're currently located under that empire. Unfortunately, we're under the empire of Turtle Island, but liberation is around the corner. You know what I'm saying? In the mortal words of Sam Cooke, we say change gonna come. And we got a hot show today. We got one of our favorite people joining us today. A brother that doesn't shy away from speaking truth to power. You know what I mean? A brother that is like many of us used to being criticized, but like many of us, he put that work in so you can talk all you want to because you can't outwork them. You know what I'm saying? So that right there is what really matters. A whole lot of people could talk, but a whole lot of people can't walk. You know what I mean? So we have joining us here today, along with Dr. Ife, who keeps it disappearing. She's back now. But we have with us here today one
Yeah,
of
people.
no doubt, welcome back. We have one of our great OGs that's been putting in work for at least a half a century. You know what I mean? He's been putting in work before all of you on the screen and possibly me, you know what I'm saying, even existed. He's been putting in work before some of our parents met. So that's how far back he goes. So we want to give him his dues. Whenever we call on him, he's here. So without further ado, no stranger to Black Power Media, we welcome Dr. Cornel West.
Oh, what a blessing for me. What a blessing indeed. Sister Dr. Ife, Brother Isaac, Brother Fernando, Brother Bouna. And I tell you, anytime Brother Kalonji calls, I come running because I know something good is happening.
Man, we in the building. We appreciate you running. I'm glad you got your shoes on because it's getting hot out there. Brother, you gotta run fast up here. You gotta be on some Jackie Joyner Kersey up there.
I hear you. I hear you. No, it's true. But know that there's a dialectic between the run and the fun. There's a joy in serving the people. There's a joy in telling the truth, and whatever wounds and bruises and scars go with it, all of that blues sensibility goes with it. And the blues is precisely about the ways in which the fun and the funk keep freedom alive.
Man, listen, man, I told y'all Dr. West was one of the greatest rappers alive. Someone was fronting. I think Isaac wanted to battle you in rhyming, but I told him, he wasn't ready for you yet. But, you know what I'm saying? We're gonna keep him on task, though. But again, we welcome you here today. We know that we were surprised because our brother Isaac, he said, I got a guest coming on. And we ignored him because, Isaac and some of the other hosts, I ain't gonna name no names, they be saying the guests are coming and we won't see nobody. But anyway, today he came through. So we'll start off with our brother Isaac. I'm gonna let him take the microphone and and anchor this thing.
Yes, thank you, Kalonji. First and foremost, Dr. West, I want to say thank you for accepting the call. Last conversation that we had, most of the comments said that it got a little heated, a little disrespectful on my part. So from that standpoint, I do apologize for any heated animosity. It's always good to debate with individuals, especially my elders. So it's I am happy to have you here, so that at least we can align on topics that suit our people. So the topic for me, just to kind of start this off, would be where your stance is right now on the united front against fascism. We've seen some of your potential running individuals that are running against you kind of co-opt that term recently, and so I'd like to get your thoughts on that, and I'd like to also say thank you for shouting out Black Power Media, Kalonji, our elder Daruba bin Wahad, as he made the initial call. So if you could speak to that, and then I'll pass this over to Dr. J, also known as Dr. Ife.
No, indeed. But thank you, my dear brother Isaac. Man, I appreciate it. Appreciate your remarks. Though none of us have a monopoly on truth, beauty, or goodness, we come with a spirit of humility precisely because the people are suffering so much, and we got to keep the focus on the people's social misery and how they bounce back with a resilience and a resistance. And so we're learning from each other all the time. At the same time, we throwing down. We taking a stand. And most importantly, we willing to serve the people and sacrifice for the people with a smile and style. Now, Daruba's just like Kalonji. Anytime that brother calls me, I come running. I have profound love and respect for my brother, not just because he's been so consistent, been so willing to sacrifice, but the brother just got a rich personality, man. And you could feel the soul in the love in his soul. So he's a love warrior, the deepest level. And that's different than just having a correct analysis. So when you're a love warrior, you feeling the people at the deepest level. And it soaks your soul to to be in service to them. That's Deruba. That's also Kalonji too. So that I was just telling the truth that when he called for that united front, he and Brother Kalonji called for the gathering and the dialogue. We gathered, we dialogued, and it's a grand vision. And they were going beyond just the election. You see, they were not calling for all of the different parties to homogenize. They were calling for a united front of the different parties and pre-party formations, other institutions to come together and keep a focus on the escalating fascism, because fascism is in many ways one of the dominant forces in the dying American empire. There's just no doubt about that. The question becomes, how do you fight the fascism? Part of the problem is that people think you fight fascism with new lives and crimes. See, that's the Democratic Party. You see, they act as if they're anti-fascist, but they enable a genocide. They deny a genocide in Gaza. They can't say nothing about AFRICOM, let alone Sudan and Congo. They can't say nothing about the escalating occupation of Haiti, because they run around talking about America's an idea. Now America's an empire. And there's been 70 of them since the human species emerged from Africa. In the United States, the number 68. And every empire is characterized by organized greed and weaponized hatred and routinized indifference toward the vulnerable. And every oppressed people, no matter who they are now or then, must at some point straighten their back up, see clearly, organize, sustain institutional capacity for truth and justice and love. And so from the very beginning, we have to be very honest about what an empire is. America as a particular kind of empire. See, America is unique among empires because no other empire understood itself as wholly innocent when you are the authorizers of devastation. And every empire got their own specificity. We can go back to the Ottoman and the Russian Empire and the British Empire and the empires in the history of Africa and so forth. But America understands itself as beyond history, God's gift to history, and therefore innocent, so they can't keep track of the violence that's done in the name of its innocence. And yet it's one of the most violent cultures in the history of any empire, with indigenous peoples and enslaved Africans and domestic violence of women and unbelievable crushing of workers' movement. I mean, Rockefeller had a private army bigger than the state army in Ohio when they crushed the workers in 1877. And all you do is look at the films. They got John Wayne Airport in Irvine. What you gonna name an airport after John Wayne? John Wayne ain't nothing but the embodiment of American imperial expansion, crushing indigenous people as if their babies don't have the same value as a baby born in London. So there's a spiritual sickness. There's a moral obscenity. And the beautiful thing is, you see, we come from a people like this sister right here, Harriet Tubman, or Ida B. Wells, or Frederick Douglass. We can go on down to Mississippi, but our dear sister Fannie Lou Hamer, who have been courageous enough to tell the truths and loving enough to serve and soulful enough to share a soothing sweetness of a great people against the backdrop of grim catastrophes. That's the tradition that we're trying to keep alive and then pass it on to the younger generation. Because Brother Kalonji is right. You know, I'm old school. See, I'm Curtis Mayfield and dramatics and Delphonics and things. The Dales, I know y'all probably heard of some of them, but you might not be soaked in them the way I have been soaked. And I'm blessed to be soaked in Isaac Hayes and David Porter and the Emotions and the Hutchison sisters and so forth. And everybody got their historical moment. Y'all got your rich historical moment, culturally, musically, spiritually, psychically, organizationally, and so forth. And everybody builds on the best of the past and then wants to pass on the best to those I'm looking at right now on this screen, the freedom fighters of the generation younger than me, but got the same courage, same love, same sense of service. It's what the great Mary Baraka called the changing same, that great essay of his of 1966, when he was talking about what it is about Black music in the new world. It got that blues continuum. So on the one hand, it's changing all the time. The innovation, you can't keep track of it, but the sameness is the same commitment to dealing with catastrophe, the same commitment to keep swing in it, the same commitment to be improvisational. Those are the three pillars of Black music: blues, swing, improvisation. And you hear it in Jay-Z, you hear it in Louis Armstrong, and we ain't even got to Sarah Vaughan yet. She's the peak of it all.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna jump right in, and forgive me, Bob quite naturally came out my mouth, so I don't want to be disrespectful, but in my world, we call OGs Bob, right? Baba West.
Can
you hear me all right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we hear you.
You hear me all right? Okay. So I love what you said. I love the context that you put us in, because as new school, we are continuing, no doubt, on the legacy of our ancestors and some of our living legends that are still existing today. And I appreciate the question that my brother Isaac proposed in terms of your thoughts about fascism. I want to extend that because there are some of us who are incarcerated right now because of our stance against the empire. Specifically, I want to ask you about Assata Shakur, because I think there's a very interesting momentum of Black womanhood that's being used in a very interesting way. And I'm not going to get into how it's being used. But in the context of our freedom fighters, what are your thoughts on the reality of people like Assata Shakur, Kamal Siddiqui, Leonard Peltier, literally being able to be acknowledged in our society as freedom fighters and being liberated from incarceration? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. No, appreciate that question, my dear sister, definitely. And I appreciate that, Baba. I noticed got that deep respect there. And I don't know if I'm worthy of it, but I will accept it and embrace it, my dear sister. Absolutely, indeed. But, when I talked about how the violence is built into the making of the American empire in a distinctive way, but specifically in ways in which it denies that violence, that America has one of the most pervasive repressive apparatuses for those who are willing to tell the truth. And it targets those on the chocolate side of town. So nearly every Black freedom fighter who has told the fundamental truths about America's white supremacist imperial project has either been assassinated, incarcerated, or thoroughly marginalized, which is lied on, rebuked, scorned, misunderstood, misconstrued, and so forth. You see? And so you really have to go. That's why when you go to the jails, you will find some of the most courageous Black folk. Just like if you go to the professional suites, you'll find some of the most cowardly Black folk. Why? Because the courageous ones telling the truth constitute a fundamental threat, whereas the cowardly ones are well adjusted to injustice and accommodate themselves to empire, capitalism, and white supremacy. And there's a tremendous conflict in terms of mass culture, a mainstream culture of who the celebrities are or who the present day highly visible people are. But if you use the criteria of truth and justice and love of the people, then you go straight to Assata, Mumia Abu-Jamal, H. Rad Brown, Abdir Iman, Jamil Abdullah Al-Hamin, and there's a wave of others as well. And then, of course, there's assassinated ones, and there's a long list of brothers and sisters, many of whom we don't even know the names of those who had a deep love for black people and were shot down like dogs too often early in their lives, you see. And so that's one of the reasons why spirituality is so important, not just for black folk, but for black freedom fighters. So you got to have your soul intact, and your spirit has to have an armor and a fortitude, because what's going to be coming at you is so intense, military-wise, spiritual-wise, professional-wise, and so forth. And the aim of it is to create fear in you, because that's what white supremacy does. It doesn't just try to spread lies of black people saying we're less beautiful, we're less moral, and we're less intelligent. Yes, that's part of white supremacy. But the core of white supremacy is to keep black people so afraid and scared and intimidated, laughing when it ain't funny, scratching when it don't itch, have to wear the mask in order to make it through a mainstream existence, and therefore you can't never be yourself, so you are distant from the very sources of your strength, and you falling back on weaknesses, and those weaknesses don't allow you to gain access to the best of your history. It would be like in the 1960s if the only access I had was to Rudy Ray Moore. And I love me some Rudy Ray Moore, and y'all might remember Dolomite. You see, I love Rudy Ray Moore. But if that's the only brother I got access to, and I can't get to Curtis Mayfield and Nina Simone, how am I going to be a strong black man? And the very end and aim of the recording industry, which is run by oligarchs and plutocrats on the vanilla side of town, giving all black genius and black talent, but you got to go through the oligarchs and the plutocrats more and more. They just want versions of Rudy Ray Moore and Dolomite. They don't want Curtis Mayfield. They don't want Gil Scott-Heron. They don't want Nina Simone. No, they don't want the Isley brothers talking about fighting the power, let alone Chuck D, who gonna build on fighting the power. We got a whole continuum, a rich tradition that they push aside. And so when it comes to someone like Assata, I mean, Assata is a very, very grand example of a highly mature and developed freedom fighter. I'm talking about these artists who are not as developed as she is intellectually and ideologically and so forth. But the same would be true for Brother Leonard. We just did a thing for Brother Leonard with Brother Kalonji. What was that, about 2-3 weeks ago, my brother?
Yeah, about 2 weeks. Yep.
About 2 weeks ago, definitely. We had the same struggle with Brother Oscar Rivera, our Puerto Rican brother. He got released. We were on that for 15 years or so, you see. It's the kind of thing that Ella Baker was deeply concerned about, struggle against colonialism in Puerto Rico and that beautiful coming together. Same is true with Rosa Clemente, who ran vice president 2008 on the Green Party. She Puerto Rican, black sister, strong. She ran with Cynthia McKinney. You all might remember in 2008, bringing together the rich legacy of anti-colonial struggle in Puerto Rico, connecting it to Lolita Lebron, another strong revolutionary sister. Laura Albizu Campos' sister, Laura Campos, who I was just with just 3 years ago. She just died recently when I went to Puerto Rico, and we had lectures with the different groups struggling for independence against American imperialism down there. Those are the ones that really need to be highlighted. So thank you so much for uplifting Sister Assata, because she's a long distance runner. She's a marathon runner, very much so.
Right on. Bouna.
Yeah, I tend to ask very long questions, so I'll try to be as short as possible, right? I wanted to get Dr. Cornel West's opinion on the strategies that we can implement in order to overcome the internal contradictions of the potential united front against fascism. I'm saying this because historically, if you look at the history of the US, there has been the tendency of oppressed groups to join the group of the oppressor, right?
Right.
So, for example, you had groups of European migrants who, after a few days, upon arriving in the US, they started lynching black people, right? And despite the fact that they belong to an oppressed group. So these are some of the contradictions that we see, including here in Europe, among groups that have a common interest in defeating fascism, but who do not necessarily have the same interests. Okay. Before we started the show, when we started the show, I semi-jokingly said that I was the only person in this show who was born in Africa, right? But I said that because we, as hosts, as activists, our priorities is to defend the interests of the indigenous and the African people, right? But this is not necessarily the same interests that people who might join the United Front Against Fascism will pursue, right? So my question is, how are you going to convince other people who do not have the same interests as us to sacrifice their own interests for the sake of fighting fascism? Hopefully my question is clear enough.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question though, brother. Definitely. As Brother Kalonji said, not only the species all goes back to Africa, but as Black people in the late modern world, that we all are Africans in that very deep sense. There's an Africa in the Western Hemisphere, Africa on the continent, Africa in Paris, Africa in Berlin, Africa in Korea. I mean, in that sense. But I hear what you're saying, though, and I do think that Pan-African sensibility is very important, at least for me, because part of it is, you see, in the age of Europe roughly begins 1492 and ends in 1945. It so deeply reshapes the whole globe in the image and in the interest of European corporate powers, European governments, that the white supremacy cuts so deep. It cuts so deep, and it cuts so deep, not just in the remaking of the societies around the world, but it also cut deep in the souls of Africans, in the souls of Black people. So, for example, precious African brothers and sisters from Ethiopia, Ghana, so forth, come to New York, or where I live in Harlem on 123rd Street. Well, too often, the New World Africans, Black folk in Harlem, will look at those who come from the continent through white supremacist lens, because the white supremacy cuts so deep. And the Africans who coming in look at the Black folk in Harlem through white supremacist lens. You see, because they've been exposed to all the lies about Black people in movies and film and novels and cartoons and all the different ideological expressions. And the same is true with Black folk looking at folk from Ghana and so on. And the only way you break the back of those lies is not just through abstract argument. You can't just say, well, everybody's equal. Everybody got to understand they're equal. Well, okay, that's a nice start. But you have to have concrete context of struggle together that then reveals the depths of the lies and the mendacity that's hiding the crimes and the criminality. And it's the breaking the back of lies through that concrete practice. That's why what you all are doing with the Rise is so very important, because you actually have a context in which you're reflecting on practices that are on the ground, that allow for bonds of trust to be created, that become the basis of the internationalism that we need and the Pan-Africanism that we need. And white supremacy can never be downplayed, because it's been so central in the making of the age of Europe. That 1492 to 1945 is not just a long time, but it has disproportionately shaped the realities that we have to come to terms with today. And after 1945 is what? The age of the American Empire. They just hand the baton over. Now the American Empire is part of the relay, with the capacity to blow up the whole world, try to extricate every possible raw resource, whatever land they gain access to based on their military might, and still tell a lie about itself that it's the beacon of freedom. It's the last hope for humanity. Please, if that's the last hope for humanity, the crack house is going to be overcrowded. everybody gonna be snapping. It's like, oh Lord, have mercy. Jesus Christ. But it's precisely the kind of solidarity that you all are talking about it, but the solidarity that's concrete. It's not the kind of just abstract solidarity. That's why, of course, skin pigmentation, which was one of the pillars of white supremacy, the devaluing of beautiful black people's skin and noses and shapes and hair texture and hip shapes, hip sizes and so forth. Skin pigmentation is an element, a crucial element of white supremacy you got to keep track of. But skin pigmentation in and of itself is not a sufficient basis for the kind of solidarity we're talking about. Because there's always going to be black people who make cowardly choices that reinforce structures of domination of other black people. There's no doubt about that. You had 4,000 black members of the Confederate Army in the United States in the Civil War. When I was down in Charlottesville, just 7 years ago, I think it was 2017. But the press didn't talk about, there were some black folk marching with the neo-Nazis and the Klan. You see, no, this is a confused mother, shut your mouth. You know what I mean? What the? What's going on? But people make choices, and it extends beyond that too. The Ku Klux Klan in the United States targeted black people primarily, but it also targeted Jews and Catholics. Well, I'm down there, I run into David Duke. He's Catholic. He's head of the major Klan branch. So that's upward mobility, American style. The very organization founded to murder and maim black people especially, but also Jews and Catholics. Now you got a Catholic running it. You had Jewish folk who were there. Because why? Many of our Jewish brothers and sisters decide to side with empire, decide with white supremacy. And that's precisely what's happening in Gaza. Everybody knows that if those 15,000 precious Palestinian babies were white babies or Jewish babies, the European world would have a qualitatively different response. The deeply racist dimension of thinking that a Palestinian baby just doesn't matter. And yet if the white babies or the Jewish babies are treated the exact same way, it's the end of Western civilization as we know it. That's how sick white supremacy is. And we see it for what it is, but we don't allow it to have the last word. Because we got a rich tradition of response, you see, with resilience in our minds, with our analysis, with our hearts, with our love, and with our organizing strategies and tactics that have to try to sustain structures over time, no matter how weak and feeble they may appear to be in the light of the powers that be. This is part of the challenge right now with this Harris moment. You got so many folk breakdancing now. Oh my God, we gonna have the first black woman, black Asian head of the American empire. This is one of the great historical moments. Come on, Brother West, you need to get on the bandwagon. Hey, wait a minute. I tell my brothers and sisters, y'all gonna confuse movement on the plantation, even if it's upward, with being on the Underground Railroad. Still on the plantation. Now you're going to want to be one of the 4 women or the 4 men on the plantation and think you part of a freedom movement. Please get off the crack pipe.
No, I appreciate that, Dr. West. I appreciate you. I appreciate the answers. Again, like I said, I appreciate you being here on the Rise Up morning show with us. And I want to thank you for all the work, throughout the years, for all the work you've been doing for our people. I love the way this conversation is going, and the fact that you mentioned the importance of Pan-Africanism. I'd like to speak a little bit about environmental justice.
Yes.
I know I was reading on your website, and you speak about a radical reimagining of our relationship with the earth, each other, and future generations, right? We know that, we understand that capitalism is literally killing our planet, right? And we understand that, you know, the eco side is real. I would love for you to elaborate a little bit on that, please. And, you know, speak about the importance of, you know, putting environmental justice at the center of our struggle as African people.
Yeah, no, indeed. I appreciate that question, though. And more you see people shifting in that regard. I mean, Brother Tavis Smiley just had a wonderful C-SPAN show on this, connecting what you call racial justice, environmental justice. There's been talk about it, of course, going back 30, 40, 50 years. And I mean, Marvin Gaye's Mercy, 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 Mercy Me, that was April 1971, one of the greatest critiques of the ecological conditions that people, and especially Black people, were undergoing. And he was almost 25 years ahead of the scholars in that regard. Y'all remember the last song on the greatest album of popular music in the last 75 years, Marvin Gaye, What's Going On? What does that mean? It means, in fact, then, that first, the obsession with short-term profit that precludes any long-term perspective on human flourishing, on human maturation, human development. And predatory capitalist processes try to create a world in which everybody and everything is for sale, and the criteria of what is valuable is viewed in terms of what has short-term profit or short-term gain. So for me, when you know, we talk about environmental justice, you really begin with the fossil fuel industry. And the major contribution to fossil fuel is the U.S. military. So you can see how the militarism goes hand in hand with ecological catastrophe. Now, when you got almost 1,000 military units around the world and got 130 special operations in over 100 countries, that's what the American empire is. So it feels it has to dominate every nook and cranny of the globe and extract resources. And in doing that, anytime you privatize, you militarize. The privatization and militarization go hand in hand, because you're going to have the military to protect the private property, which is the context in which the corporations have liberty to exploit, liberty to subjugate. And so you can see how any talk about environmental justice has to go hand in hand with, as you rightly said, you know, the ways in which capitalist processes economically, but also the ways in which capitalist processes culturally. Because you see, if you grow up, let's say with a younger generation, I got a lot of precious brothers and sisters come up to me and say, Brother West, we sure appreciate your brand. I say, I ain't got no mother hucking brand. What you talking about? Oh, we know your brand. We see it on TV. We see it. Hey, back up. I got a cause. I ain't got no brand. I come from a people who had brands on their bodies on those barbaric slave ships, on the way to those slave auctions, on the way to that barbaric plantation. But they use brand because it's a market metaphor, and it's so deeply saturated into the culture that it becomes normal. It becomes naturalized. You think Malcolm X had a motherfucking brand? Please. You think Fannie Lou had a brand? Curtis Mayfield didn't have no brand. They told him, quit writing those songs. Don't show up with Snick. They told Coltrane, don't go to Malcolm X's lectures. You're going to lose all of your followers. He show up with his horn. He don't have no goddamn brand. He got a cause. He's trying to create music from his soul so that he could lament Alabama and he could generate love supreme among a people taught to hate themselves. So if everything is for sale and everybody's for sale and commodification is ubiquitous, then of course everybody's just trying to find what their brand is in the market niche. Well, that's a whole lot of what culture is in the United States now. I can tell you that right now. It's true in the academy. It's true on the street. It's true in business. Everybody getting their brand, their niche. Make sure they can get their market. Well, capitalism is real, so you're going to have to make some money some way, so you're going to be able to sustain yourself. But if your cause is reduced to a brand, and if your calling ain't nothing but a career, and if your vocation ain't nothing but a profession, then we ain't going to have no movement. Or put it this way, it's going to be all plantation movement. It ain't have nothing to do with the Underground Railroad. Ain't got nothing to do with the legacy of this great sister here, Harriet Tubman. She didn't have no brand. She had a cause. She had courage and love in her soul. She cutting against the branding of her people, starting with her brother Henry, and just kept going back over and over again. Ooh, oh, that's deep inspiration. Indeed, indeed. And you all, same way, cutting against the grain in your own distinctive forms and so forth. But I think the environmental issue has to be couched in terms of the capitalist backdrop. And it has to be couched in terms of how white supremacy creates conditions in which the worst effects of ecological catastrophe is found on chocolate sides of the American empire, of the globe.
That's right.
That doesn't mean it doesn't affect others too, but the worst effects are disproportionately there because of the ways in which white supremacy and modern capitalism are intertwined.
Definitely appreciate the answer, because we know that it came from the soul, and definitely reminding folks about that whole brand, because I think we get caught up in the terminology, chains and whips and all of that type stuff. You know what I'm saying? And I got to go work on the plantation and all that craziness that basically, working on the plantation belittles our experience or our people's experience, because your form of a plantation is definitely not the plantation that many of our ancestors had to.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. I want to remind folks that you're checking out the Rise Up Morning Show. This is Black Power Media. We have our guest, Dr. Cornel West, and he rapping like. I mean, I would say like Rakim, but I think you might have got Rakim right now. I'm not sure.
No, I never catch up with Rakim. Well, I never catch up with you, but Rakim is the John Coltrane of hip hop. I told him that when we did a show together, and it's so true. So no, I just want to be on the train in the caboose, but we all moving together on that track, that love track, that justice track. Absolutely.
Without a doubt. Matter of fact, Rakim does have a new album out, so folks out there, make sure you get that. He produced the album himself, and it's actually pretty dope. Sure. I want to go to the pink elephant in the room. You mentioned one of America's former top cops, Kamala Harris. I know that about a week and a half ago, Black folks in particular were ready to jump off the roof and jump over the bridge and swim with the sharks and crying and falling out like my mother at Revival. And what ended up happening was, when Genocide Joe decided that his Geritol was no longer effective, and I think he decided, or the party decided, that he'd be stepping down. And all of a sudden, like we predicted on this show, or like any person with any type of logic could have predicted 4 years ago that they were going to use a Black woman as the face of empire, regardless of her politics. You had folks talking about, it's not about her politics. It's about gender. Folks don't want to vote for her because she's a woman or because she's Black or any of that type stuff, which we know that it is pure nonsense. It's garbage. I'm sorry I had to say that here, but the reality is, America's in a crisis. We're at war, and we're seemingly going to hell in a handbasket. I want to ask you, what does this moment in time mean, particularly to Black folks in America? I know that, it's been a chain of events over the past 3 weeks. You have Trump getting shot at. We're not sure what went on with that. You had of course, this whole change in direction as far as with Joe and Kamala. I want to know, what does this mean? Because we know that you are a sharp brother, and we know quite well that you, of all people, won't fall for the banana in the tailpipe. What does this mean to Black folks here in America, and also Africans around the planet? Because we're talking about, just like Obama, we have a potential new face of empire, and folks get confused with who's on the throne opposed to the empire itself. So, if you don't mind, give us your breakdown of what's going on right now.
Yeah, no, appreciate that though, brother. I think on the one hand, the implosion of the American empire, which has to do with military overreach, it has to do with deep corruption among its elites, economic elites, the greed, political elites, the unbelievable legalized bribery that's taken place, and then the desperation of the vast majority of folk in the U.S. empire, and the desperation among Black folk even more intense. Now, for me, I mean, anytime I see Black folk with smiles and joy, it puts a smile on my face and it gives me some joy. I see it in the churches. I see it in the concerts when I go see Maxwell or go see Rhapsody or somebody. I see it in the barbershops, in the beauty salons. I see it in the mosque. I see it in the pool halls. Anytime Black folk are experiencing a certain kind of joy, it fires me up. The question then becomes, what is the moral content of that joy? What is the vision that is directing that joy? And so when I see 44,000 Black sisters get on the internet and raise this $1.some million, 53,000 Black brothers, good God Almighty, you can't even get the National Baptist Convention to get that many Black folk on the internet, and you got 11 million Black people who are Baptists like myself. What is happening here, right? It's like a Frankie Beverly concert. Everybody is up and down, flipping over. Hey, this is nice. This is nice. Now, what y'all talking about? What are you talking about? Kamala Harris. The Kamala Harris we know in all this time? You got to be kidding. Is that what you're getting fired up about? Ooh, but the desperation is real, and they're grabbing for straws. The desperation is concrete. They thoroughly misled, and they thoroughly fallen for an illusion. So how do we, out of love for them, intervene in such a way that we tell them that we understand your desperation, but we don't want to see capitulation. We understand your pain and your social misery. This is not going to deliver. We've seen it over and over again, and somebody got to do it. Usually you got to be sacrificial again, because I'm getting this now, as you can imagine, my campaign. I get calls from them now. Oh, you got to suspend. Oh, you got to withdraw. You can't stand in the way of Black people marching like this. You're going to be the cause of American fascism and all. Hey, they offering, you can imagine, they got money and something. Nah, you got the wrong Black man. I'll take your money and all your lies and your glitz and your blitz and all of your mainstream bourgeois movement on the plantation. You got the wrong Black man with me. Not because I'm so pure. I got more gangster than me than they do, but I work it through every day. And I redirect my rage for service to the people, because I've got a whole lot of rage in me. Whole lot of, wasn't for my Bible and cognac and my grandmama's prayers, I would have been long gone, long time ago. So our first aim is to tell the truth. And what is the truth? The Democratic Party is part of the corporate elite. It is a, what would be the right word for it? Because both of the parties, the corporate duality, are like wings on the same plane. And the big money colonizes them. The big money dominates them. That's why they can't say a word about Gaza. That's why they can't say a serious word about Wall Street. Even Bernie himself, who used to talk about Wall Street greed all the time, he folds so quick because he don't want to have to cut against the grain. He was right on Wall Street greed. But the same folk who he's now promoting have been facilitating Wall Street greed. And he couldn't say an anti-imperial word about Gaza. And it took him 6 months, just like it took Sister Harris 6 months to even mention ceasefire. Well, the baby's already dead. The innocent folk already dead. You've been occupying and dominating for 70-some years anyway as part of the handoff from the British Empire to the American Empire that facilitated the founding of Israel. So you just try to tell the people the truth. We love them and respect them enough to tell them the truth and then try to manifest it in your behavior and be willing to, as they told me just the other day, where they said, they say, if you don't fall in line, the Democratic Party machine will crush you. Crush me? Jesus. And that's all y'all can do. Then you better go back and try something else. What you think Assad have been through? What you think Mumia been through? What you think A. Fred Brown and them been through? Please. What kind of threat for crush? And that they mean that they'd crush your reputation. Oh, your legacy is going. I don't give a goddamn about what you think about my legacy. That's like John Coltrane be concerned about what Paul Whiteman and Glenn Miller concerned about his legacy. He's concerned with what does Charlie Parker think about my legacy? What does Sarah Vaughan think about my legacy? You better have some authority when you talk about legacy. I want to know what Martin and Fannie Lou would think about my legacy. I don't give a goddamn what some Harris group thinks about my legacy. They have no right and no moral authority to even dictate what it is. They don't even understand that, God bless them. So we have to be buoyed up enough to tell our truths and know we got to pay the cost for it. But we're doing it because the people themselves is not only suffering, but will continue to suffer. And they get caught in these illusions. And as I said before, you don't fight fascism. I am an anti-fascist. So the Trump's gangsterism, his white supremacy, his sickness is real, but you don't fight that with more imperial lies and crimes. If you're going to be anti-fascist, you got to get at the root of it.
Damn it. Yes, yes. You're checking out, again, the Rise Up Morning Show. We have Dr. Cornel West, and the fire just getting started. Don't get it twisted. You know what I mean? He ain't playing. In fact, what we're going to do, we're going to let him breathe. We're going to go to one of our other OGs real quick for a quick 3-minute break, if that's all right with y'all. You know what I'm saying? Dr. West, you good over there?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Okay. Right on, right on. We're going to take it to the continent real quick since we talk about Africa with a little bit of our brother, Sekou Toure.
Il ne s'agit pas de nouveaux complots. Il s'agit de la continuation du même et seul complot. Celui-là qui s'inscrit dans la contradiction devenue fondamentale entre les options socialistes faites par le peuple de Guinée et les prétentions illégales de certaines puissances qui voudraient encore maintenir la Guinée, malgré sa volonté, dans un carcan d'exploitation favorable à leurs intérêts particuliers. La dernière fois, nous savons qu'il y avait notamment l'Allemagne fédérale, le Portugal, la France, deux pays africains, pour ne pas les citer, aidés par la 5e colonne impérialiste organisée en Guinée, qui était à la base de l'agression du 22 novembre. Les mêmes forces coalisées contre l'indépendance guinéenne n'ont pas tiré les leçons de leur forfaiture et continuent encore le long de nos frontières des préparatifs. Et ainsi, les complots que nous avons connus ont été fomentés grâce à l'appui des puissances impérialistes, mais avec la complicité des nôtres. C'est ce qui me fait souvent dire, et tel que dans le discours du 1er mai dernier, et les véritables ennemis de l'Afrique sont des Africains inconscients. Car si tous les Africains exprimaient la même volonté d'être, la même volonté d'authenticité et de dignité, eh bien l'impérialisme ne pourrait pas du tout réaliser son dessein, à savoir dominer le continent africain.
Thèse du leader ivoirien, selon lesquelles le refus d'engager le dialogue avec l'Afrique du Sud entraînera fatalement un conflit sur le continent.
Pour notre part, le dialogue dont il s'agit signifierait trahison des intérêts supérieurs de l'Afrique. Nous ne sommes pas prêts, nous Guinéens, et je dirais plus, nous Africains, sincères, authentiques, nous ne sommes pas prêts à accepter un dialogue quelconque avec ceux qui exploitent, oppriment odieusement nos frères et qui ont la prétention de s'ériger au-dessus des populations propriétaires naturelles du sol que par la force des baïonnettes, par la ruse, ils sont arrivés à accaparer.
Yes, indeed. That was one of the OGs,
Right.
Sekou Toure, Ahmed Sekou Toure. When you talk about Guinea, when you talk about revolution, if you're not talking about Ahmed Sekou Toure, then you ain't talking too much. Anyway, we're back live and direct. This is we're here with Dr. Cornel West and crew. How's everything going, Dr. West? You still good or what?
Oh man, you just bringing back deep memories of my dear brother Stokeley, my dear brother Kwame Toure. We used to travel together around the country. We went to Hawaii together. We met with the indigenous leaders, and he was somebody who had such a profound love of the people. And he always took anniversary in just a few days. And we'll be making this point, as you can imagine. A number of us will be there and speaking and making this point because it was manifest right there in Ferguson. The direct connection between the struggles in Gaza and the struggles in the West Bank with the young people connecting with what Tefpo and all the other folk were doing right there in Ferguson. And it's a beautiful thing. It's what Brother Martin called the marvelous militancy of the younger generation. Isn't that a beautiful way of putting it? And he says that in a non-paternalistic way. You know, he ain't looking down on the young folks saying, when you going to catch up? No, he learning from the young folk. He learning from Stokeley. He learning from Diane Nash. He learning from the young people, you see. And of course, they learning something from him. Very much so. Now, Malcolm was already there, but we won't get into Malcolm, though. Lord have mercy. No doubt. You ain't going to catch up with Malcolm for another 100 years.
At least.
You know his statement on the Palestinian thing. All you got to do is just put his statement on the Palestinian struggle right there on your internet before any conversation. You say, dang, Malcolm, you
in the discussion.
And you're speaking like you just showed up straight out of the mosque last night. Come on, brother. Good God, yeah. That's the kind of love that brother got for the people. That's the kind of truth telling he got, you see. That's why we love him so.
Right on, right on. Ife, you got some
well, I want to jump in real quick. Yeah, I have a question because I think as I appreciate this whole entire conversation, obviously everything makes sense, right? And I think what keeps coming to my mind is this undeniable kind of contradiction. What happens when the revolutionary becomes a part of the empire, right? So I know that you are running to be a part of the empire, right? And with all of this obvious contradictions, how do you reconcile that? How do you, it almost reminds me of the movie The Matrix. You know, Neo at some point has to go into Machine City and kind of tap in for him to really bring it down, you know?
Was it Cornell in the Matrix?
And so I just want you to
No,
y'all feel exactly what this is, you know? So if we are able to accomplish the goal, of getting you in position, you and your co-conspirator, Dr. Abdullah, if y'all are able to go within the matrix, talk about that energy of being the revolutionary within the empire. What does that feel like? What does that look like? How do you reckon?
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful, wonderful question. Well, one is that the contradictions and the incongruities and the deep tensions are always there. You either use them in a creative way or they take on a destructive form. That's what it is to be human. That's what it is to be somebody who wants to overturn and transform a system of which one is a part, not just externally, but also, as we talked before, the system's also inside of us. All of the greed that I talked about, we've been taught that. All of the white supremacy that's out there, we've been inculcated with that. The male supremacy, inculcated with that, and so forth. So the question then becomes, well, then how does one remain in contact with the creative form rather than destructive form? Well, when I say, now I've been running for 14 months, and I say I want to head the empire in order to dismantle the empire. What does it mean to be an anti-imperial candidate? To be headed toward the heading of an empire you want to dismantle. Well, it's a way of pulling back on the 800 military units around the world. 62 cents for every $1 that goes to the military. You cut radically that money and invest in what? Anti-poverty programs across the board. I've said over and over again, I'm not even going into the White House till everybody has a house. Not because I'm so moral or anything. It casts a limelight on the million folk who don't have a house tonight, who don't have a place to live. And of course, the U.S. Supreme Court just criminalized them. So we're just in Skid Row just a little while ago here with Pastor Q and Church Without Walls. So now they're trying to move them out. So you cast a limelight on it, but you're only an extension of a larger movement. If your movement is not strong, then you get caught, and it's less and less you're able to do inside of this system. Right. And if you think that somehow you can do something without the movement bringing power and pressure to bear on the system, then you've fallen into the transformation we were talking about with Clyburn and John Lewis and others. You just become a cog within the party machine. Or another way of putting it is you just become part of the party plantation rather than trying to connect with the waves of freedom struggle that we associate with that Underground Railroad. And so therefore you got to have friends, you got to have partners, you got to have comrades who keep you accountable, who tell the truth about you. They say, well, you're starting to rationalize your accommodation. You're starting to sell out. You're starting to get weak. Those kind of accountability is very important. Every freedom fighter needs that at every stage of their life. Every stage of their life. I mean, Malcolm was a great example. What is Malcolm without the Honorable Elijah Muhammad when he was in that cell? He's Malcolm Little. He's our brother, but a gangster brother. He's not yet awakened. Elijah loves him into his own self-love and self-respect and allows him to surface with power and found the newspaper. Islam dignifies. Whoa, what he put on the cover of that newspaper. That's powerful stuff. That's like my church. Jesus deniggerizes you, takes the nigger out of you, takes the fear out of you, takes the hatred out of your blackness and gives you a different way of being in the world. But then Malcolm, lo and behold, he started outgrowing the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He said, I'm thinking for myself. I've been reading and talking to Wallace, his son, who was a great scholar. And I go to Mecca. I'm meeting all these revolutionaries and things. I love Elijah. He loved me, but I'm still growing. I'm still maturing. I still got miles to go before I sleep. But the common denominator is the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's love of him, Malcolm's love of us, and the ways in which those loves take different forms. And the disagreements are deep. Very, very, but for me, the important thing is that I always hope that the love is deeper than the disagreement. You know what I mean? Because I love the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I really do. People, how about you say something like that? He go, hey. The brother looks like my deacon in Shiloh. And what did James Baldwin say? I looked on his face and I wonder what he sounded like if he could sing the blues. Because Elijah had some hell he went through in Jim Crow, Georgia, didn't he? And somehow he got to organize these black folk and love them enough. Well, his patriarchy was deep. That's wrong. He's wrong on that. But that don't mean all the love is exhausted. He produced Muhammad Ali. See, we Black Baptists ain't produced nobody free like Muhammad Ali, even though we got Count Basie out of Calvary Baptist Church. Muhammad Ali, one of the freest black men in the 20th century. His freedom was inseparable from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But he also outgrew the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He's growing too. So all I'm saying is that all these differences tied to empire, tied to different institutions, tied to different plantations, we want to be honest, we want to be candid in our critiques, but we also want to keep track of the love. That's the crucial. Because in the end, that's what really frees you up. That's what really frees you up. See, Stokeley, he could talk about scientific socialism. I used to bring him to Princeton every year, get in trouble every year. The Jewish brothers and sisters protested my classes and lectures. And how come you got to bring Kwame every year? Because he's a truth teller you need to listen to. You don't have a monopoly of the truth. You need to listen to him. Then he would pack the place and I'd introduce him and he had 300 people outside with the Israeli flag. This is back in the 1980s. But I would always introduce, whatever you think of this, brother, scientific socialism, all African People's Revolutionary Socialist Party and so forth, he got a love for me and my mama. He got a love for my cousins. He got a love for oppressed people all around the world. And this is how he's working it out. Tell him, brother Kwame. And he just lay it out in his magnificent Trinidadian mediated with the Bronx and Howard University and Alabama way. That's the Kwame that we love. Even though I didn't always agree with him. You can imagine, you know what I mean? We had our differences, but whatever the disagreement, the love is always deep. But that's, to me, a very, very important thing. And that's why that's true for any of you or anybody else. Of course we have our disagreements, but we know that in the end, our priority is that whatever gifts we have and capacities we've cultivated, we're going to use it in service to the people in our own way. That's very important. That's very important. Definitely. I think we got one more because I got a thing at 11:30 and Anahita told us she's going to hold off because this is too rich to stop right away. But we got a couple more before we end though.
No doubt. So if we could, we can maybe go to a quick one from Isaac and a quick one from Bouna, because we know Bouna did his 30-minute question, but he ain't come back after that. So matter of fact, if you don't mind, we'll go Bouna first, just in case time, and then we'll go to Isaac, if that's all right before we wrap.
That's dynamite.
We'll get out your hair, Dr. Cornell.
Oh, this is beautiful, though.
Once again, I really appreciate having Dr. Cornel West. It's an honor and privilege to participate in the show with you because you've been one of the sources of inspiration for Africans not only in the US but throughout the world, right? And you're one of the only few fearless black freedom fighters whose voice resonates throughout the diaspora. And I just had a question regarding what you said about the interconnection between the Black freedom struggle and the struggle for the liberation of Palestine. I think one of the issues that we're having is that many of our brothers and sisters are not aware of the long Zionist tradition of attacking Black freedom movements, right? You've talked about Kwame Ture. He's been a direct victim of Zionist attacks, right? Because SNCC was dismantled. Maybe I think it was 3 months after they took a strong position on the 1967 invasion of Egypt by Israel. And there have been also other movements who've been direct attacked by Israel using the classical charge of anti-Semitism. And we also shouldn't forget that Israel has been the main ally of apartheid South Africa, providing weapons, billions of weapons for more than 27 years. So I think this is something that many of our brothers and sisters are not aware, and those who are aware are very afraid of the consequences they might suffer when it comes to confronting directly the Zionist lobby. We've seen it recently with the brother Jamal Bowman, who lost his position as a congressman, although he was in the plantation, Democratic Party plantation, but he was one of the victims. And I think the message that the pro-Israel lobby has sent to the Black community was also very strong. So my question to Dr. West is, what type of advice would you give to those among within our community who are still afraid of the consequences they might face if they take a strong position on supporting our brothers and sisters in Palestine?
We're
Yeah,
going to wrap after this question because we know Dr. West has another interview, so we appreciate it, brother.
no, but what I can do is I let Brother Isaac ask his, and then I respond to both of them. But that's a crucial question about the Zionist impact and the way in which APEC, $15 million against Jamal right now with Corey Bush in St. Louis, they're already up to $5 million. APEC. But Brother Isaac, you want to ask yours right quick, and then I'll say something about both. Is that all right, Brother Kalonji?
It's a quick question in regards to what Dr. J, also known as Dr. Ife, on here for those that are just tuning in. It's to compound on that very important question that Dr. J asked, and you did answer in retrospect, to how certain things would be allocated, how certain things would be utilized. But I looking at it from a more international perspective, a lot of the monetary funding that we see here in America is off the backs of other Africans abroad. And so, how would your campaign factor in that even though we do need aid for houseless individuals, we do need free education, we also have to understand that the money that America, white hegemony has produced is also a byproduct of the exploitation of our African brothers abroad, and indigenous people abroad as well. So if you could, how does your campaign factor in that ideology, that even though you would be the head of a state, or aiming for that, how do you from an international perspective look at the redistribution of the wealth that has been taken from our African brothers and sisters?
Oh, yes. No, and those two questions are related, though, because, see, on the one hand, we're talking about what used to be called Marshall Plans. Remember the Marshall Plans when Europe was devastated and dependent and became nothing but a divided continent with the Soviet Empire on the one hand, the U.S. Empire on the other. The United States put billions and billions and billions of dollars to rebuild Europe, just as it put money in to rebuild Japan. Well, there should be massive so-called Marshall Plans for the global South. And even that is not a matter of, for me, acknowledging the massive exploitation, because I'm also a proponent of reparations. Reparations goes far beyond what citizens are owed. Citizens are owed certain things, but the reparation is something that Black people are owed that goes beyond everyday citizens. And so those are two different rails. Those are two different things we're talking about in terms of flow of resources. But the bottom line is the massive flow of resources, funds, and monies to poor people and working people, subsidized small businesses and so forth. That's what we're talking about. One of the ways in which you're able to do this is to acknowledge the ways in which the American imperial order, in which Zionism has played a crucial part in facilitating just weaponry, not just production, but the weaponry that Israel provided to Central American countries, the weaponry that they provided to the apartheid regime in South Africa, the weaponry provided to a variety of different countries. How do you keep track of that larger matrix, to use sister's language here, that larger network, as it were, with the focus on those sly stone called everyday people? Old James Cleveland called ordinary people, beginning on the chocolate side of town, city, state, country, world, and then spill over, of course. We'll press folk all around the world. How do we keep that vision, that vocation, that calling, that focus? That's the crucial thing, because the powers that be want to eliminate those things so that people don't even gain access to it. People not even exposed to it. Even when you say a certain name like Malcolm, all they see is just a commodified entity rather than a flesh and blood brother who comes out of a tradition of a great people who himself is learning from a whole host of others, including Martin. Remember, he and Martin were supposed to go to the United Nations together to bring the United States on trial for the violation of human rights. The FBI laid that out in June of 1964. So even when you talk about Malcolm, you're always talking about him in movements in relation to other people, empowered by everyday people, learning from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, learning from Martin, learning from his Marxism, learning from the Trotskyite group he had dialogues with, learning from Garvey, his father, who was a Baptist minister, learning from the tremendous courage of his mother, Louise, all of that feeding into this particular flesh and bone human being. That's what is so crucial, so that the kind of analysis that we're talking about begins to really take on real flesh. You know, the Bible said, and the word became flesh. The spirit funkified in the unbelievable styles of an African people who were told they nothing, but they create something out of nothing and step out on nothing and land on something. Good God, what is it about these great African peoples? Just stay tuned, and see. See the rise it up. Just stay tuned. That's all.
No doubt. That's what it's all about. We definitely appreciate you taking the time to rap with us today. I know Boona gonna be looking in the Bible to see where it say functified, but it's all good. We're gonna
it's in there. It's in there.
It's all up in there. It's all up in there.
You might see him in the front row of your church. Don't trip. But anyway, we definitely appreciate
love y'all.
Yes, love you as well. Always.
Thank you, Dr. West. Thank you so
I'm
much.
sorry I got to run, but love you. And anytime you call, you know that, Kalonji. You know that, though, brother.
Right on,
Thank
brother.
you,
Take good care now. Appreciate you now.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you. Checking out the Rise Up Morning Show. That was Dr. Cornel West. As you all know, if you don't know, now you do. How y'all feeling? Y'all good over there? Y'all look like you nervous and whatnot. Okay.
Deep conversation.
Yeah, that was deep. That was deep.
I had to help Dr. J out because that question it really didn't get answered all the way, and so I needed that further explanation because when people talk about distribution of wealth, i.e. the mass hoarding of not just the production, the labor production that's here, but also the resources that are extracted abroad from our African from our African homelands. We have to factor that in there, regardless if African, it is running for president or not. That has to be the main contradiction. Okay, it was, well, what are you going to do when you get to that stage? And he answered it in his way, the Dr. West way, which is no knock. It's not a disrespect or anything. it was a good conversation. He opened the floor. He got a little bit more open than I've seen him on any other podcast channel, network, syndicate, so it was really good to see him, not back down from the questions that we had and answer them in a way that for most might think, he was dodging the question. No, Dr. West has this particular way of answering questions, especially questions that are compounded, questions like, that are 30 minutes, like Bouna's. No, I'm just playing.
Here's the 27 minutes.
Right. Yeah, Isaac, you wasn't so far from
you. Yours quick. Hey, Dr. West, like, I gotta go, Isaac, and when I was 13 and you were 12, and I know your hair designer, and I went to school with her, and I'm like, God damn, that's the question, man. The man gotta go. Damn, that's the question, man. The man gotta go. No doubt. I'm best you, but definitely no doubt. I'm best you. Good stuff. I don't know why I sound like I got an echo now, but definitely appreciate all of you in leading this fight. Yes, we hear you pretty good right now. Yeah. Any comments from you, Bouna or Fernando? Or
yeah, I just wanted to say, once again, I appreciate Dr. West's contribution not only to this show, which will probably reach 100,000 views tomorrow, right? Or the other day. But anyways, I mean, we should not underestimate the impact that it's having on our struggle. And I'm always skeptical when I see brothers and sisters spending entire shows attacking Dr. Cornel West, because I think, has nothing to prove. I mean, he's been in the struggle for decades.
That's right.
We might not like, some of maybe the ways he's responding to questions, as I said, but we have to give him credit for staying steadfast on the position that we share with him. I mean, there are so many, so many traders, so many sellouts that whenever we have a fearless African, like I said during the interview, who's staying firm on those positions, we should we should be very careful when it comes to trying to show our elders that we are more radical than they are, right? Because this is something that I have been, I have seen. I'm not going to mention any name, any program, but I think some of the brothers and sisters have been quite disrespectful to Dr. Cornel West. And obviously, I'm not talking about Isaac because I haven't watched the show that he was referring to at the beginning of the show. But some people have been very harsh on Dr. Cornel West, and I think, despite the disagreements that we might have with some of his position, I think would be a mistake to underestimate his contribution to the struggle that our brothers and sisters are carrying out in the U.S., the context that we are very familiar with, but also in Africa, right? So whenever you have Dr. West on for the show, including after the election, I'll try to tune in, like he said, and get as much wisdom as I can from him, because I think he's one of the not only national treasure, but also a Pan-African treasure. Yes. So this was my 10-minute response to your question.
It was actually 8.5. I was surprised. I'm like, yeah, we might be able to end the show after all. Right. But I think that to all of your points, I think that for one, I'm skeptical of people who disrespect our elders, period. You know what I mean?
I know that's right. Yeah.
Cornel West has never, his track record, you can't see anywhere where he sold us out. You might not agree with every decision. You might not agree with every thought. The fact is, me being an organizer myself and just being an African man, I don't know anyone on the planet that I agree with wholeheartedly 100%, from my children to my parents to my ancestors, so on and so forth. We might have certain things that we are steadfast on, and then certain things that we differ. And that's just an actual fact. That goes to my OGs and all that, because what happens is you can become a zealot. But what I appreciate about Cornel West is it's consistent. If I see him in a public space, it's not like some folks, they'll acknowledge you while you are on the screen or something, and then they don't know you when you're in the crowd, because they don't want folks to know that that they would even rap with someone like you. But I definitely appreciate his work. Good to see all you on the joint. I know that my brother Bouna has been going through some things over on his side of the water with pigs over there, and when he's ready to talk about it, of course, we'll be ready to back him on that, because right now we have to understand that imperialism is global. We say it,
Yeah,
but I don't think we internalize it. I don't think we understand that. So, that's the deal. We're about to end this thing because it is about that time. Ife dropping dishes. Somebody dropping something. Might have been somebody else. But we will see you all tomorrow.
It's me. Yeah.
Yeah, we will see you all tomorrow on the Rise Up Morning Show. Plus, till next time, man, we're gonna keep that freedom fighting going, man. We love y'all.
Make sure you like, share, subscribe. Yep.
Yeah.
Rise up.
Rise up.
Yeah.
Indeed. Salute.
Got it.
Sometimes the riot is a quiet one, where the battle is to love yourself and function in society, where voices of reason are muted by anxiety, like gaining notoriety is selling your soul. So we tend to go no deeper than the shallow water level, trying to keep us overhead in the face of all the slurs and the stares, mentally frozen, paralyzed by fear of failure and success. So we lock, stock, barrel, running while it's crumbling. All these towers and they're babbling, but the baby's in the bath and the stash under the bed. On my head, spinning from the circles and the puppets and the strings that they pull, then we move. Reactionary warfare never produces winners on the field. Feeble and foolish, what tools and what weapons are we using? We need some new ones. Real revolution, it's real solutions. What we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution, where my inner me really a mirror for the galaxy. New time, brand new paradigms, new contracts to sign. They thought that this would all be televised, though it's happening right before our very eyes. It's on the inside, with their guns cocked. When that rock drops, standing on the rooftop, praying that the mountaintop can live inside the valley. People tell me the reward is somewhere off in heaven, like heaven's only in the sky. Like chariots are swinging, like God is something separate from yourself, from your wealth, from your lover, from your neighbor. Oh, your savior is coming in your own name, coming with the face the same. Real revolution, it's real solutions, where we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution, where my enemy is really a mirror.